What happens to all of this at the end of the season? We've been able to grow our food from spring to fall, and now that we've harvested the remaining crops, it's time to clean up and prepare the garden for next season. To start, I'm removing the shade netting on our covered bed. We use this mainly to protect vegetables and prevent them from bolting. Ours has a 30% sunblock rating, but you can get a much higher percentage if you live in a hotter climate. They do help with moisture loss as well. I'm still growing some cold-hardy crops like lettuce, and they'll need to be protected when freezing temperature starts. I'm simply swapping a mesh door with 6 mil polyethylene cover, and the great thing with this is that I'll be able to plant early in spring. Around this time, I also start harvesting lemongrass. They are perennial to zones 8 and up, so if you live in a warmer climate, you can leave them in ground and they will keep regrowing again and again. As for me, my winters are long and cold, so I have to restart this plant indoors year after year. Lemongrass can be used in many dishes, so we normally save the stalks and freeze them for winter, and dry the top leaves for tea. Just behind our fence, there is a black walnut tree, which is the main reason why we go with containers to grow our food. Black walnuts contain a chemical called juglone, which prevents a lot of plants from growing. So when the squirrels started storing all the black walnuts into our grow bags, we had to do something. I decided to remove all the nuts and store it back on their side, in hopes that they could leave my garden alone next year. You can eat black walnuts and there are many uses for them, but we still have enough from last year. As for our containers, we use the soil year after year and just amend it in spring. But before we do that, we chop and drop leaves and stem and add a layer of brown leaves on top. The only thing that you want to avoid adding is any plant that showed signs of disease. Not everything in the garden needs to be cut back. We do plant perennials, and some will come back after winter. Plants like mint, lavender, kale, European goldenrod, and even oregano will come back. And for our garden beds, we do the same thing. We chop and drop leaves and stems and add them back into the soil. The more we do this, the more it enriches the soil and builds soil health. Over time, you'll end up with rich organic soil. I know this plant had a lot of powdery mildew, so I'm going to avoid adding this into our garden bed. Because our winters are particularly long and cold, it's best to protect perennial plants in small containers and place them under cover so that they have a higher rate of surviving. If you want to be able to extend your season a little bit longer, you can use a plastic cover and this works just as well. Even though our outdoor gardening is done, our journey hasn't ended yet. Follow along for more as we start our indoor garden.